She was only 24 years old, a new bride, laughing in a blue satin dress that shimmered under the Charleston lights. Music played, glasses clinked, vows were still fresh in the air. And then she vanished. No screams, no trace, just silence, and a wedding poster that became the only reminder of the night she disappeared. For 18 years, her children grew up with questions instead of answers. And then, one summer evening, a woman stepped into the very same square, wearing the very same dress. The city froze. The family gasped, and a seam in the fabric revealed a truth no one was prepared to face. This is the story of a mother who returned when everyone had given up hope, of children who demanded answers, and of a dress that held a secret for nearly 2 decades. Before we begin, tell me, where in the world are you watching from? I read every single comment, and I truly love the interaction with all of you. Charleston's late summer air clung to the skin, cicadas sawed in the live oaks, and a brass trio on the church steps rehearsed 3 bars until the trumpet found its note. Paper lanterns, salt white, floated above King Street, casting halos over brick and wrought iron balconies. A radio in a corner store hummed a beach classic. A screen door thudded, a dog barked twice, then settled. The city was a hymn of small sounds. She stepped out of the shade like someone leaving a photograph. The dress struck first, the blue of Tidewater glass, once luminous, now faded. Satin that had learned to whisper frayed at the hem where a night long ago made it catch. A missing button above her ribs was replaced by a safety pin, a small, stubborn star. The bodice drew a careful line across her shoulders. A shallow ridge along the left seam suggested a secret the fabric could not smooth. People slowed without meaning to. A child in a stroller pointed. A waiter paused mid-pour. Her hair was pinned the way old photographs teach you to pin it. Her hands, scarred in places you notice only on a second look, cupped themselves as if to carry water. She took 3 soft breaths, tasting humidity and salt, then faced the church with the pale steeple. A bell struck 5. The brass trio fell quiet. Even the cicadas seemed to hitch. 18 years had been folded into silence. The city unfolded them in a single stunned inhale. Down the block, a bakery window held a photograph Charleston knew by heart. A young woman in the same blue dress at a wedding, laughter on her mouth, a hand not quite waving. A caption below, "Missing since August 14th." The dress walked back into the caption. Salt from the harbor moved in on the wind. A gull cracked the air with its hinge of a cry. Her heels touched the church's front steps, pine-worn smooth by years of Sunday shoes, and her fingertips found the rail with the muscle memory of someone who knew its height. She closed her eyes as if searching a drawer in the dark, then breathed out a single name. Emily. In the sanctuary, the air held thin coolness, beeswax, lemon oil, the faint metal whisper of an old organ. Stained glass saints threw patient colors across pews that remembered other vows. The dress brushed the aisle, threads tugged free and drifted like rain you can't feel. Her steps slowed where the wood creaked, a map her body still knew. Across the square, someone flipped the bakery sign to "closed" and straightened the frame around the missing poster. The smiling woman there wore the same blue, the same torque of hair, the same crescent pendant at her throat. One detail differed. In the poster, the chain was broken. On the woman in the aisle, it had been repaired with a tiny knot. Visitors would later swear the pressure changed, like weather arriving. Locals would say the light thinned. Her right hand slid along the left seam, where the stitch was fractionally heavier. The pad of her finger found that ridge, then hovered. 18 summers earlier, music had spilled across this square. A wedding flung open its arms, white tablecloths, hibiscus, shrimp, and grits. A rented fan that complained in the heat. She had laughed, tilted her head, and pressed a note into the bodice seam with a shaky breath. By midnight, a storm reached the coast. By morning, only the poster remained. Now she lifted her chin and faced the doors, as if expecting them to move first. The brass outside found its song again, soft at the start, then widening. A breeze rolled the lanterns. The safety pin above her ribs held its small, bright vigil. She whispered a second name, one never printed on a flyer. James. In the instant before the doors opened, a flyaway thread blinked in the light. It wasn't the church that changed, it was the city. The dress was back, and with it, the last night it had been seen. Laura Bennett learned early to file chaos. As a young literature teacher at Burke High, she grouped poems by season, believing that if a feeling had a label, it behaved. On her wedding day, she stitched an unlabeled moment into the left seam of her dress. A folded note written at a kitchen table while the caterer's van idled. 18 years later, she can still taste the metal of that choice. She returns at 42 with the habit of smallness, shoulders slightly tucked, voice kept to the register of apology, hands that straighten frames without thinking. Scars stipple her fingers. A thin line crosses her right palm, souvenir of catching a falling mixing bowl as she slipped through a reception kitchen long ago. At her throat, a crescent pendant rests cool. The chain is mended with a precise knot. Charleston comes back by smell before sight. Salt, pluff mud, lemon oil rubbed into pews, boiled peanuts in paper. Cicadas hush a beat before the church bell. She remembers Emily's toddler laugh and James only as a promise whispered to Dark, "If I get to come back, let me bring him stories." Laura's dreams were ordinary: teach, make a home with morning light, collect used books annotated by strangers. The night she vanished, the ordinary cracked and something colder slid underneath. Since then, she has learned to breathe thin, to let days flow over her like water around a stone. She is good at surviving. She is out of practice at returning. Michael Bennett, who once finished her sentences, works with ledgers, a quiet man who knows the grocer's children by name. He keeps his ring on a chain. He does not like surprises. A dress walking out of time is not a thing for which he has a drawer. Emily, 20, studies journalism at the College of Charleston. She bikes everywhere, a yellow rain jacket balled in her basket in case the sky breaks. She keeps the case like an archive, photos, witness quotes. She sang off-key to the radio, a single blue button in a bag. She tells herself she's strong on facts, soft on hope. The truth is the reverse. James, 18, maps the city by courts and bus routes. He fixes what's broken, sticky drawers, AM radios, because function is a language he trusts. When people say, "your mother," the phrase touches a bruise he can't see. He rides the causeway when anger knots. None of them expect the dress. Crossing the square, Laura practices a sentence. Not "I'm sorry," not "I can explain." A simpler, riskier line. I am who you remember, and I can prove it. She taps the heavier stitch in the left seam. The memory unwraps with the soft rip of thread, leaving fabric. A note smudged by humidity, the last line, written in a rush. If I disappear, ask Victor about the storage unit on Meeting Street. Then thunder, then the kitchen door, then rain that smelled like pennies. She has not said Victor Hayes's name in years. She learned that silence can be a kind of armor, thin but useful. Truth, however, does not petrify, it ferments. And today it has new air. Detective Carla Morales keeps the Bennett file in a banker's box under her desk and not in the attic. She once lost a daughter to a driver who forgot a stop sign. Grief taught her to respect unfinished stories. She wore a groove in this case, interviewed a trumpet player about the set list, measured the alley, walked the square at dawn for a witness who never appeared. The box stayed open longer than policy prefers. Victor Hayes, best man that night, is the fixer friend who always knows a back entrance and a vendor's cell number. His bourbon laugh filled the room. his hand on people's shoulders a shade too firm. He also knew something else: how to make a person feel watched without being seen. Laura has never confused charm with safety since. Every habit on Laura has a lineage. She checks exits because crates once blocked an alley. She waits 3 beats after a question because a pause once kept a name from spilling. She wears flats disguised as heels because running in satin is a lesson you only learn once. When she speaks now, she leaves white space for a listener. She has been waiting a long time for the right one. Charleston breathes around her. A bus exhales, a skateboard clicks over brick, Spanish moss threads iron, and comes out whisper. Laura studies the bakery poster like a student. Same mouth, same cowlick, same pendant, except her chain bears the tiny knot. Proof of life in miniature. A man with flour on his forearm steps halfway through the bakery door. "Ma'am?" She turns so the light catches the seam. 2 fingers rest on the ridge. "I am who you remember," she says, "and I can prove it." The bell rings again. A girl in a yellow rain jacket bumps the threshold, then stops. The sound she makes isn't a word yet. It's recognition lifting a hand to its mouth. "Mom?" The poster's tape curls. The city holds its breath. Inside Laura, the lined-up drawers unlatch at once. From behind the girl, a shadow pauses, broad-shouldered, familiar with this block, smelling faintly of aftershave and wet cedar. Michael has turned the corner and is looking directly at the dress. The silence after Laura's return did not last. Within hours, the air around Charleston filled with murmurs, like ripples spreading across still water. People leaned into neighbors, whispered over phone lines, folded newspapers with trembling fingers. A woman missing for 18 years, back, alive, in the same dress? Some called it impossible. Others swore they'd seen her that very morning, turning the corner by Marion Square. Emily couldn't stay still. Her apartment near the college filled with scattered files, clippings, photographs, scribbled notes. She had cataloged every rumor since childhood, a journalist before she even knew the word. But now details she once dismissed resurfaced, pressing against her memory. The bakery owner whispered to her, "The chain on the pendant, it wasn't broken this time. I noticed it, I swear." A neighbor near the church claimed Laura paused at the seam of her dress, fingers searching for something hidden. James, meanwhile, rode his bike hard along East Bay Street, anger thudding in his chest. He told himself it was ridiculous. This woman wasn't his mother, just a ghost in fabric. But when he returned home, the kitchen table drew him in. It was the same table where Michael, his father, had once quietly folded a missing poster. Now an old gouge in the wood seemed deeper, as if waiting for a key that had never turned. Detective Carla Morales, who had once spent nights retracing steps around the square, heard the news from a rookie at the precinct. She froze, then reached for the banker's box under her desk. Its lid, worn from years of reopening, creaked like it recognized her. Inside lay a photograph clipped with notes. Dress, blue satin, chain, broken. She tapped the line twice, then picked up the phone. Her first call was not to headquarters. It was to the storage facility on Meeting Street. That name, Meeting Street, was one Emily knew too. She had found it in a scribble at the bottom of her father's old ledger, long dismissed as coincidence. Now it pulsed like a drumbeat. That night thunder gathered low over the harbor. The lanterns that had lit Laura's arrival now swung harder in the wind, casting shadows against the church walls. Inside, Michael faced her at last. He had rehearsed this confrontation in dreams, in nightmares, in silence, but the real moment offered no script. "You disappeared," he said flatly, his eyes locked on the safety pin above her ribs. "And you come back like this?" Laura's hands trembled, but she pressed them to her sides. "I had no choice." Emily leaned forward. "Then explain. Prove it." Laura's fingers traced the seam of her dress, hesitant. "I can," she whispered, "but it will not be safe for any of us." James scoffed, pushing away from the table. Convenient. 18 years gone, and now you warn us? The room grew taut as rain tapped against the window pane. Carla Morales entered quietly, holding the old file. She placed it on the table between them. If she's telling the truth, the answer's been here since the beginning. The dress is not just memory, it's evidence. Emily's eyes widened. She remembered the bakery owner's words. She remembered the ridge on the seam. Mom, what's inside? Laura's silence was louder than thunder. She did not answer. Instead, she looked toward the window, where the street lamps flickered under the storm. A tall figure stood in the rain, shoulders broad, face hidden in shadow. He didn't move, only watched the house with the patience of someone who had waited years. Lightning split the sky. For a fraction of a second, the shadow's face appeared, and Emily recognized him. It was Victor Hayes. Rain stitched itself across Charleston all night, thin needles on glass. Inside the Bennett kitchen, the old ceiling fan clicked on the fourth blade, a sound James had learned to ignore until now. Laura sat at the table she remembered by touch, the shallow gouge near the salt, the heat-glossed ring where a teapot once lived, and laid the blue dress flat across her lap, palms hovering as if over a sleeping animal. Detective Carla Morales placed a small sewing kit on the table. "You stitched something into the left seam that night," she said, keeping her voice low. "If you want to open it, we do this together, and we document everything." Emily angled her phone to record, fingers trembling so badly the image shook. Michael stood braced against the sink, eyes on the safety pin above Laura's ribs. The room carried lemon oil and storm and the faint copper of fear. Laura found the ridge by memory. She slid the needle under a single thread and lifted, the sound impossibly loud, the soft, dry unzip of time. Out slipped a small brass key on florist's twine and a strip of paper, sweat wrinkled and faint with humidity. Carla read aloud into the camera. "If I disappear, ask Victor about the storage unit on Meeting Street." A second line scribbled lower. "Unit 314, do not come alone." James sucked in breath. Emily's eyes flared. Michael didn't move. Carla bagged both items in evidence sleeves, then dialed. "Meeting Street Self-Storage?" she said, when the line picked up. "This is Detective Morales. I need access to Unit 314 with the named tenant present." She covered the receiver and looked at Laura. "Who's on the lease?" Laura swallowed. "Victor set it up. He said it was for extra wedding supplies, garlands, candles. He left me the key in case the florist needed anything. I didn't believe him. That's why I wrote the note." Michael's jaw worked. "You told me none of this," he said. "But there was no heat in it, only old exhaustion." "We were in the middle of vows," Laura whispered. "I thought I would have time to decide." They left before dawn, the storm lingering like a thought you can't shake. Meeting Street smelled of wet concrete and crepe myrtle. The storage facility office glowed fluorescent. A manager with coffee breath and a Clemson lanyard met them at a desk lined with plastic bins. Carla's badge flattened conversation. "Unit 314 is leased to a Michael Bennett," he said after typing. He turned the monitor as if to show he wasn't lying. Signed August 14th, the night of the wedding. The room rebalanced around the claim. Emily looked at her father. James stepped back as if the floor had shifted. Michael shook his head once, slow. "I didn't sign anything," he said. "I was at the reception until midnight, then at home with Emily. Ask anyone." Carla's eyes stayed on the screen. "Can we see the paperwork?" In the printout, a black ink signature tilted with an uncanny fidelity to Michael's hand. The tenant address matched their old house. The emergency contact read, V. Hayes. "People forge," Carla said, not looking up, "and people steal mail. We do not leap." She slid the form into an envelope and nodded at the manager. "We'll open it with the tenant present, and my body cam on." The hallway to Unit 314 hummed with the industrial sigh of AC. Fluorescent bulbs buzzed. Somewhere a lock clinked. Laura held the brass key like a relic. Her palms were damp, the twine stuck to her skin. Emily walked half a step behind, already narrating in her head, smell of dust, flicker of lights, mother's breath uneven. James kept his hands in his jacket pockets, as if to protect them from an accusation. At the door, Carla positioned herself, so the body cam saw everything. "Ready?" she asked. Laura nodded. The key slid in with a fit that felt preordained. The lock turned. The metal door rolled up with a corrugated groan, dust pressed forward like a warm animal. The unit was not full. Against the back wall stood a garment rack holding a single plastic draped shape. To the left, a low metal shelf held a gray fireproof box, a stack of labeled banker's boxes, and an old Sony camcorder case. On the right, a florist's crate, garlands brittle as straw now, white ribbon gone ivory. Carla swept a small penlight across the space. "No one moves anything until I clear it," she said. But even from the threshold, the outline on the rack declared itself. A second blue dress. Carla let the camera take in the moment. "We proceed," she said. She gloved, lifted the plastic. The dress beneath was the twin, same cut, same buttons, except for two differences, a shade bluer, unworn, and a perfectly smooth left seam. A tag on the hanger read, "Spare." "Why would there be two?" Emily whispered. "Because the first wasn't meant to survive," Laura said. On the shelf, the fireproof box was locked. The florist's crate held only husks of a night, place cards, brittle garlands, ribbon gone ivory. Carla unzipped a Sony camcorder case and slid out a high-8 tape labeled Ori Das 14. A sticky note on it. "If they ask, tell them she left in the van." "Victor's writing," Laura said. "We'll process the tape at the precinct," Carla replied. "Meanwhile, labels." She pointed to bankers' boxes, Reese PPS, flowers, candles, and one marked only V. Inside, envelopes bound by a rubber band. On top, a receipt from a bridal shop on King Street. 2 bridal gowns, custom fit, paid with card, $77.12. Name, Michael Bennett. James stared. "Dad?" Michael blinked as if the paper were a trick. "772 is ours," he said, "but I didn't buy 2. Carla showed the receipt to her body cam. "We treat the charge as disputed until the bank answers," she said. Beneath the envelope lay photocopies of keys, including one stamped with the storage logo, and a stack of Polaroids. Emily reached for the top one. The Bennett house, windows at night, a stroller on the porch, a little girl in a yellow rain jacket on the steps, a man's shadow, long across the walk. Dates in white ink. 2009, 2011, 2013, years after the wedding. On the back of one, block print, "She's fine as long as you listen." Laura covered her mouth. Michael went gray. Carla bagged the photos. "Not one night," she said. "A campaign." They sealed the unit and headed out. Rain was now a mist. "If Victor did this," Michael said on the curb, "how was he outside our house?" He looked at Carla. "You saw him." "I saw a silhouette," she said. At the precinct, an old HI-8 deck chattered to life. Static, then color, the reception kitchen. Humid, clattering. Laura in blue. Victor off to one side, laughing with a florist as he loaded garlands into a van. The camera joggled like it was hidden at chest height. Someone whispered, "Keep rolling." On screen, Laura moved into a corner, slipped a strip into her bodice seam, then looked back. Time stamp, 11:07 p.m. Victor approached, smile not reaching his eyes, close enough for the mic to catch syllables. "After the bouquet, we'll go to the unit. Quick errand. You'll be back before cake." He took her left hand, his thumb pressed until she flinched. "Pause," Carla said. Frame by frame, the flinch held. "If anyone argues consent, we show them this." Play. At 11:23 p.m., and the van door slid open. Laura stared into the lens for a breath as if she knew it was there and gave the smallest no. Then the frame tilted to the tile. Shoes crossed, polished lace-ups and scuffed boots. "Dad," Emily whispered, "those are yours." "I cut through the kitchen to grab Emily's blanket," Michael said. "I didn't see a camera. I didn't see this." "Proximity isn't complicity," Carla said. "The tape shows Victor steering." A rookie hurried in with a printout. "You asked for a check on Victor Hayes," he said. "County lists him deceased. Boating accident, 2012. The room chilled. Emily saw the lightning-lit face at the window, James, the patience in the rain. Michael gripped a chair until his knuckles whitened. Carla flipped the page. In the margin, survived by brother, Owen Hayes. A phone rang twice, then cut. Carla headed for the hall to find Owen's last address, only to stop. He was already there, leaning against the wall outside the squad room, rain darkening his shoulders, Victor's face stamped on his. "Detective," he said quietly, "you're looking in the wrong decade." Owen Hayes did not wait to be invited in. He stood in the squad room doorway like a rain-dark exclamation, hands visible, gaze steady. Up close, the resemblance was a blow, jawline, the half-smirk that said rules were furniture. Emily felt the old porch-light image lock into place. The shadow that had watched their house years after the wedding was not a ghost from a camcorder. It had a name. Detective Carla Morales let silence do its work. When she finally spoke, her voice was as flat as a ruler. "You're Victor's brother." A nod. "Was," Owen said. "He died in 2012. Emily's throat made a sound before words. "Then why did I see him in our window last night?" Owen's eyes flicked to her, then back to Carla. "Because you're looking in the wrong decade," he said. "You're mapping a straight line from that kitchen to now. It wasn't straight, and it didn't start at the reception." Carla neither blinked nor conceded. "Start then." Owen's gaze moved to Laura, and something like regret passed through. "Your mother got curious months before the wedding," he said. "She taught at Burke. She noticed event invoices that didn't line up, floral orders billed twice to the school's booster club and to private weddings. It was a wash and cycle. Stolen goods moved through celebrations and fundraisers. The florist was a node. So was my brother. So were other people you still invite to Christmas." Michael's jaw clenched. "Name them." "I'm not here to pour a list," Owen said. "I'm here because the person who built the system is not my brother. He just learned the dance." His gaze stayed on Carla. The first stash wasn't Unit 314. It was a school storage cage off King and Beaufort. Late 90s. That's the decade you should be in. Carla's fingers opened the Bennett file, then stopped. "Dates," she said. 1999 to 2002, Owen answered. "Port merchandise, electronics, jewelry, fundraiser auctions that never auctioned. Someone cleaned it with confetti." Emily could feel the room retilt, facts clicking into new grooves. Laura's breath shortened. Her hand rose to the left seam of the dress in a reflex it had learned 18 summers ago. "Victor approached her at the rehearsal," Owen said. His voice slid lower. He wasn't asking. He was delivering a message. Somebody didn't like a school teacher keeping an extra copy of an invoice in her notebook. "Who?" Carla asked. Owen shook his head. "Not in this room," he said. "Not without me being on a different side of the table. What I can say is this. Victor didn't plan to hurt your family. He planned to show her the old unit, scare her straight, and push the ledger back where it belonged." His mouth tightened. Then he realized leverage is addictive. Michael stared. "And the forged lease in my name?" Owen did not look away. "Victor was a copier. He pulled your signature from the marriage license paperwork, set up the 314 unit as a mirror, some real receipts, some bait, some decoy. He liked making insurance look like coincidence." "Coincidence doesn't stalk a porch in 2013, Emily said. Her voice broke on the year. Owen nodded once. "That's not coincidence," he said. "That's control. You were watched, so your mother followed rules she didn't write. Laura's fingers found the pendant, the tiny knot. Something flared across her face, anger's bright, clean edge. "Who gave him the rules?" she asked, each syllable deliberate. Owen exhaled. "You're not ready for that name," he said. Carla stepped in, the pen now a metronome against her thumb. "Then give me something I can open," she said. "A hinge, a box, a bank. Where does this system breathe?" Owen reached into his jacket without warning, palms up so the room didn't jump, and placed a small plastic sleeve on the table. Inside, a KeyBank safe deposit card. Box 12C, East Bay Branch. Client initials, L.B. Michael, blinked. "Laura?" Owen shrugged. "Your mother opened it the week before the wedding, under pressure," he said. "A favor she owed after making copies of invoices. She put 2 things in there that first day. Neither were hers." Carla's look said, "Continue." "A thumb drive with port manifests," Owen said, "and a compact disc. Photos of private fundraisers with items that later vanished in transit. The plan was to put the dress seam key in the box after the ceremony, lock it, and make it all go away. Victor changed the plan. He took her to 314 instead. The spare dress was there as insurance. If she bolted, he could swap out the original for fresh photos, muddy the trail, claim she left of her own accord. Laura's breath sawed. "He told me I'd be back before cake," she said softly. "He put his thumb on my hand when I said no." She looked at Carla. "I didn't go to the storage office. I never signed anything. I only saw corrugated metal, and I knew I wouldn't come home if I kept arguing." James's voice came raw. "So you ran?" "No," Laura said, and for the first time there was steel. "I bargained." She lifted the pendant. "He said the only way to keep Emily off our porch was if I followed instructions. So I did. I disappeared." Carla slid the sleeve with the safe deposit card into an evidence bag. "We go now," she said. Owen didn't move. "You'll need me to open the secondary," he said. The banker who rented 12C kept a handwritten overlay ledger. The branch was remodeled. "The new manager won't know where the old binder is." "And why help us?" Carla asked. "Because my brother didn't drown," Owen said. "He walked away from that boat with a pocket full of someone else's names. He liked being dead, safer that way." He glanced at Emily. "What you saw in the lightning wasn't a ghost. It was Victor." The room fell into a hush edged with metal. Emily's stomach dropped through time. Michael's hand found a chair back and stayed there like a handle. "Prove it," Carla said softly. Owen set a second photo on the table. A DMV profile from 2014. ID, Owen Hayes. Under the laminate, the face carried a pale crescent scar near the left brow. Carla pulled a wedding photo from the file. Best man, 2007. Same scar, under makeup. Different name. Same ring on the right hand. A signet with a nick by the crest. Visible on the HI-8 freeze frame. Visible in the lightning flash memory. The nick didn't move with paperwork. "You can smudge ink," Carla said almost to herself. "You can't move a scar." Owen's mouth made a humorless line. "You can if you cut," he said. He didn't. Carla's decision was a match struck. "We split," she said, already moving. "Team 1 with me to KeyBank. Team 2 to pull the 2012 ME file on the boating accident and the DMV application for Hayes. If Victor's alive, I want the seam." Emily reached for her rain jacket. "I'm going," she said. Michael stepped forward. "So am I." James hesitated, then took the camcorder tape from the desk like a promise. "We keep the receipts," he said, "every second." Owen looked at Laura. "There's one more hinge," he said. "Check the chain knot." His tone gentled. "The knot isn't sentimental. It's functional." Laura slipped the pendant free. The tiny knot was precise, too neat for a rushed repair. She eased it loose with a pin. A rice-grained sliver fell into her palm, a micro SD card, matte black, heat-warped, but intact. Carla's eyes lifted. "And that," she said, is your proof of life." As the card seeded into the reader and a folder tree bloomed, OG 14, meeting, porch, an alert flashed across Carla's screen from patrol. Neighbor report, male subject on Bennett porch, signet ring, refuses to leave. The porch light in 2025 was on. The shadow had come back for the dress. KeyBank's East Bay branch still smelled faintly of carpet shampoo and printer toner even after its remodel. A young manager with a new tie met them at the vault with crisp apologies and the kind of smile that comes before a problem. Carla's badge shortened his sentences. "Box 12C shows active in 2007, he said, scrolling a screen. "Opened by LB with a joint access notation. I'm sorry, we don't show a current cosigner." "Because the overlay ledger isn't on your screen," Owen said dryly. "It's in a binder in a locked drawer under an old printer." "The previous manager kept it when the system was down." The manager blinked. "We don't—" "Drawer," Owen repeated, nodding to the credenza. "Second from the left." It was there. In a plastic sleeve, in a hand cramped from years of entries, 12C, Access, LB, VH, Temp, Auth override by MGR, 08:14 p.m. Beneath, in red ink, a note across the line, "Hold for inquiry to T.C. Morales." Carla stared. "I filed that hold in 2008, she said slowly, "and the bank called it a clerical error. Said there was no 12C. Her eyes lifted to Owen. "You were the temp." "I was the errand," Owen said. "Victor couldn't risk being on the card." They signed the chain of custody log. The vault door whispered. A safety deposit attendant brought a narrow metal box to a private room. Laura's hands hovered over the lid, then withdrew. Michael touched his ring chain once, then stepped back. Emily watched the way her mother's breath lifted her shoulders and loved her fiercely for the stutter in it. Carla lifted the lid. Inside lay 2 items, a thumb drive labeled Port 99002 and a jewel case with a CD, its surface fogged by age. Carla slid both into evidence sleeves, then produced a small battery-powered reader for the USB. The directory populated with spreadsheets, manifest numbers, container IDs, auction lots. Someone had marked rows with an asterisk that tied later to fundraiser programs Laura had saved in a separate folder. Dates braided across years the way Owen said, the wrong decade, the right crime. The CD opened to a photo archive, rooms of laughter and canapes, objects on velvet that would later be declared lost in transit. In the corner of several frames, a man's ring blurred mid-gesture, the signet with the nick. In others, a woman wearing a crescent pendant poured champagne with the conscientiousness of someone paying off a debt. Laura pressed a fist to her sternum. Emily's hand found her elbow. "This is the system," Carla said. "Victor didn't build it. He borrowed its keys." Owen's phone vibrated. He checked the screen and went a shade paler. "Your porch," he said to Laura, "isn't a rumor. He's there." Carla didn't waste a breath. "Uniforms are already on site," she said. "We meet them there." She handed the USB to a tech to mirror and the CD to Michael to hold with gloved hands, a small, essential trust. Then she looked at Owen. "If Victor is alive, he thinks we'll protect the evidence, not display it. Let's disappoint him." They reached the Bennett house as blue lights painted the wet street. 2 cruisers bracketed the curb, a third idled at the corner. On the porch, beneath the old bulb, a man stood with rain freckling his suit. He wore a signet ring with a nick. He held nothing in his hands. "Victor Hayes," Carla said, stepping onto the first stair. "You are under arrest for extortion, coercion, identity theft, and obstruction of justice, among other things." The man smiled like a photograph of a smile. "Detective," he said, and Emily heard the lightning in it. "You've been busy." Laura's body forgot how to keep still. She didn't move forward or back. She simply fixed her gaze on the ring and did not blink. Michael placed himself half a step left of her without thinking. James set the camcorder running, red light steady. "Hands," a uniform said. Victor complied, palms up. "I didn't come to run," he said. "I came to talk. There's a difference. "Talk at the station," Carla said. "Turn." He turned. On the inside of his left wrist, just above the watchband, a crescent scar sat pale against wet skin, the same arc Laura had traced years ago when he had grabbed her hand in a kitchen. It felt like a signature drawn in flesh. "You used my name," Michael said suddenly, voice low. "On the unit, on the receipt." Victor looked over his shoulder, amusement skimming disdain. "You left your handwriting everywhere," he said. "Marriage does that." A tech sprinted out with a tablet. "Detective, the micro SD," she said. "There's a folder labeled Porch. It's timestamps of drive-bys and a clip from a dash cam. You can see the person placing the Polaroids." "Play it," Carla said. The porch monitor in the living room lit, casting a moving square glow across photographs on the mantel. The footage was skewed from a dashboard angle, wipers thrashing. At 2:13 a.m., a figure stepped from a car, moved to the porch, left an envelope under the mat. The camera caught the face when he straightened. Not Victor. Pause, zoom. The image blew pixel soft, but the eyes were clear. A different man, older. The house light glinted off a badge tucked at his belt. Emily felt, rather than saw, Carla freeze. "Who is that?" James asked. "Retired," Carla said. The word had to be forced through her teeth. "Deputy Chief Alan Reeves. He ran property crimes until 2011. He signed my hold request at KeyBank and then made sure it vanished." Victor's smile returned. "You see," he said mildly. "Wrong decade, wrong floor of your own building." Laura swayed as if a boat had pitched. "Then why did you come?" she asked Victor, steadying herself on the doorframe. "Why now?" Victor's gaze slid to the dress, to the repaired chain. "Because you finally opened the seam," he said, "and because I am not the only one who knows what's in 12C. Reeves prefers endings without witnesses." Blue lights washed the porch as radios crackled with new calls. The storm that had wandered the harbor now rolled inland, shouldering the live oaks, tapping the glass. Somewhere a transformer hummed low like a warning under breath. "Detective," a patrol officer called from the curb. "Dispatch says Reeves is last known as Sullivan's Island." "He's not at home. His cruiser pinged near the old-school storage cage off Beaufan 10 minutes ago." Owen exhaled, something like relief and dread mixing. "Back to the decade," he said. Carla's mind stacked steps as if they were evidence bags. "Cage first," she said. Then to the uniforms. "Book Hayes. Separate hold. No phone, no visitors." She turned to Laura, then Emily and James. "You three stay inside. Lock the door. Do not touch the dress, the pendant, or the files. If Reeves realizes we've opened the box, he'll escalate." Victor's voice floated back as they cuffed him. "Careful in that cage," he said softly. "The shelving is older than your rules." Michael closed the door on the porch lights and leaned his forehead against the wood for a beat. Laura stood in the middle of the living room, blue satin pooling at her feet like a tide that had found shore. Emily pressed her palm to the window, to the reflection of her face next to her mother's. James turned the camcorder toward the mantel and focused, as if framing could make a life legible. On the tablet, the micro SD's last folder, Meeting, waited. Emily tapped it open. A short clip filled the screen, a fluorescent-lit hallway, storage unit doors like teeth, a label 314. The camera hovered at knee height, low and sneaking. A hand entered frame, signet ring flashing, and set a second dress on a rack. Then the hand lifted a blue button and dropped it into a Ziploc. The audio picked up a small, satisfied click. "Insurance," Victor's voice whispered from the porch earlier. "If she bolts." Emily swallowed. The button in her desk drawer had been a breadcrumb, not a souvenir. Outside, sirens Dopplered toward Beaufan. The old wrong decade was opening its door. Carla's radio spat a word that turned everyone in the room to ice. "Officer down," followed by a street name Laura knew in her bones, Beaufan. And then a second transmission, breathless and thin. Detective, storage cage breached, items removed, suspect headed towards King, wedding district. The past had gotten into a car. It was driving back to where the dress had first learned to whisper. The Bennett living room carried the hum of a house awake too long. Blue satin lay draped across the arm of the couch, lamplight glancing off its frayed hem. Outside, sirens thinned into distance, chasing toward Beaufin, toward a decade that refused to stay buried. Inside, silence pressed hard, broken only by the tick of the mantel clock. Emily sat forward, elbows on knees, eyes fixed on the micro SD's folder tree still glowing on the tablet. Every file name was a splinter in the story she thought she knew. Meeting, porch, unit. A decade of being the girl without a mother collapsed into a new sentence. The girl someone watched to keep her mother silent. She wanted to scream, to break, to run. Instead she looked at Laura, and the question came as a whisper. "Why didn't you fight harder?" Laura's breath caught. She reached for Emily's hand, but the girl pulled back. "I thought I was protecting you," Laura said. Her voice cracked, then steadied. "Every instruction I followed, every mile I stayed away, I measured against one picture, your laugh under a porch light. I bargained with silence so that laugh could survive." James leaned against the doorframe, arms folded, eyes sharp. "Survive doesn't mean live," he said. "I grew up with a hole at the table, and now you walk in wearing the same dress like nothing changed?" His voice rose. "Everything changed." Michael placed a hand on his son's shoulder, steady but trembling. "She left because she thought it was the only way," he said. His own voice surprised him with its gentleness. For 18 years he had sharpened silence into armor. Now words cut differently. "Anger's easy, James. Staying costs more." James turned away, jaw tight. The camcorder light glowed red in his hand, still recording. "Then let's at least make it worth something," he muttered. Laura stood slowly, the pendant chain slipping against her collarbone. She crossed to the window, placed a palm on the glass where Emily's reflection met hers. "I don't expect forgiveness," she said. "Not tonight, maybe not ever. But I am here now, and I won't leave again unless it's with you beside me." The clock ticked once, twice. Then Emily's hand lifted, met Laura's on the glass. For a heartbeat, their palms aligned through the pane, reflections braided. Emily's voice broke, but did not retreat. "Prove it," she said. "Stay." Laura turned, her eyes wet but clear. "I will." The front door rattled. Michael moved first, opening it to Detective Carla, damp hair plastered from rain, eyes hard with exhaustion. "Reeves is gone," she said. "The storage cage was stripped clean before we got there. Shelves collapsed, papers scattered, but he left in a hurry. We've got tire tracks toward King." Laura gripped the pendant knot in reflex. "Back to the wedding district," she murmured. "He's circling the beginning." Carla nodded. "He wants the narrative, control, but he miscalculated. This time, you're not alone." Emily rose, yellow rain jacket already in her hands. "We go too," she said. Carla hesitated. "This isn't safe." Emily's gaze didn't waver. Neither was growing up missing a mother. James slung the camcorder strap across his chest. "He wanted us in the dark. We'll bring the light." Michael looked at Laura, then at the children. His throat worked before words came. "If this ends tonight, it ends with us together." Carla studied the four of them, the fracture of 18 years, the fragile braid forming again. Then she nodded once. "Stay behind me, and when I say run, you run." They stepped into the storm. Rain misted, lanterns swung, and the city smelled of salt and memory. For Laura, each footfall was a reclaiming. The cobblestones, the square, the church steeple silver against clouds. She walked not as a ghost, but as a witness, returned. Emily's hand brushed hers once, tentative, then steadied. James filmed, framing proof the world could not ignore. Michael walked close enough that their shoulders almost touched. At the edge of King Street, Police lights pulsed red, blue, red across wet brick. Beyond the barricade, the wedding district glowed dimly, waiting. Laura felt the dress cling damp against her skin, the pendant weight against her sternum. For 18 years, these had been chains. Now, they were evidence. Carla glanced back at them. "Ready?" she asked. Laura lifted her chin, voice low but unshaken. 18 years too late. But yes. A loudspeaker cracked across the square, Reeves's voice, ragged but clear. "Bring me the dress," he called, "or another family loses what you kept." The storm swallowed the last word. The Bennetts stood together, framed by sirens and rain, facing a man who had written their silence. And for the first time in nearly 2 decades, they were ready to answer. King Street looked like a memory rebuilt, lanterns swaying, brick shining with rain, the church steeple pale against a moving sky. Deputy Chief Alan Reeves's voice throbbed from a rented PA above the old reception hall, the same hall where Hibiscus once framed a cake and a fan had complained in the heat. "Bring me the dress," he called again, steadier now, as if volume could become law, or another family learns what silence costs. Detective Carla Morales lifted a hand to the officers at the barricade. "Hold," she said into her shoulder mic, eyes on the second-floor balcony, where a figure moved behind gauzy curtains. "He wants the crowd. Don't give him cover." Michael, Laura, Emily, and James stood in the spill of blue lights, rain threading their hair. Laura felt the satin cling, the pendant cool at her sternum. 18 years had taught her to make herself small. Tonight, she widened. "You took our choices," she said, voice carrying without a mic. "You forged our names, you turned a city into a lock. We're done paying." Reeves's shadow hesitated. "You think arresting Hayes ends this?" he shot back, invisible above. "You think your schoolteacher ledger beats out a decade of signatures? Bring me the dress." Carla nodded once to a uniform. "Turn the house lights on," she ordered. Flood lamps boomed to life, bleaching the balcony. Reeves flinched into view, older, heavier, but with the same tidy part and the same practiced neutrality that had once calmed press conferences. On his wrist, a thin line of old scar. On his belt, a badge he no longer had the right to wear. "Alan Reeves," Carla called, "you're under arrest. Property crimes, evidence tampering, extortion, conspiracy. Step down with your hands visible." Reeves glanced toward the hall's side door. A second shadow moved there, small, quick, the building manager. Wrists bound with cable ties, Reeves palmed the mic again, forcing steel into his tone. "Dress," he said, "or he gets to pay your tab." Laura took a breath that tasted like rain and lemon oil. Then she turned to Michael. "The spare," she said simply. Back at the house, the officers had bagged the twin dress from Unit 314, newer satin, smooth seam, a decoy sewn for confusion. Emily understood before anyone explained because journalism had taught her to love substitutions. "We give him the wrong photograph," she murmured, "and take the real one back." Carla's eyes flicked, calculating. "We need 30 seconds of his attention," she said to James, who already had the camcorder up. "Get the badge plate, the ring, the scar. This ends with pictures no one can unsee." They moved like a family that had rehearsed different scenes for too long and finally found the same page. Michael carried the spare dress in a clear evidence bag, hands steady. James stepped backward as he filmed. Frame rock stable. Emily walked at Laura's shoulder, yellow rain jacket bright against the night, mouth set. At the foot of the hall steps, Laura stopped. "Alan," she called softly, so only the balcony would hear. "Do you remember the lemon oil and the beeswax, the pews, the sound of thread?" She touched the tiny knot at her chain. "You can bluff a city, but not the people who live the room." He leaned over the rail, eyes finding hers. For the first time, something like uncertainty crossed his face. "You should have stayed gone," he said. "And you should have stayed small," Laura replied. Michael lifted the evidence bag. "You want it?" he said. "Come down and take it." Reeves couldn't risk the light. He moved for the side door with the manager as shield. Carla was already there, faster than the threat expected. "Hands!" she snapped. Reeves yanked the manager toward the stairwell. The man stumbled, hit the railing, and went to a knee. For a fraction of a second, Reeves's field of view narrowed. Enough. Laura went up 2 steps, not running, reclaiming. "Now," Carla said. James's camcorder caught everything, the flash of the nicked signet as Reeves grabbed, the crescent scar, the badge leather, the way his gaze skittered when Laura did not flinch. Emily slipped to the rail and cut the manager's ties with Carla's pocket blade. Michael lifted the bagged decoy higher, a beacon and a lure. Reeves lunged for it, straight into the light. Carla's cuff click sounded like a door finally closing. The square exhaled. Patrol pulled Reeves to the car, reading charges as rain softened. The building manager, rubbing wrists, stared at Laura as if trying to place an old song, then nodded once, recognition traveling a quiet circuit through the crowd. On the curb, Carla checked her watch, and then the faces in front of her, Laura's steady, Michael's stunned, Emily's fierce, James's bright with fight and fear. "Evidence goes secure," she said. Then statements. Then sleep if the world remembers how. Laura looked up at the balcony where she had learned years ago how thin a seam could feel. She placed a hand to her chest, not to quiet her heart, but to mark that it was beating where it belonged. For the first time in 18 summers, the city's sounds felt like a hymn and not a countdown. Morning came like grace, slow, unarguable. Charleston rinsed itself in a rinsed blue sky. News vans idled, then left. At the precinct, a copy tech mirrored the micro-SD, the USB, the CD. Carla filed chain of custody forms with the small, private smile of someone who had met an old failure and shaken its hand. Victor, booked and sleepless, asked for a lawyer and then, almost as an afterthought, asked for coffee. He would later plead and trade names. That was tomorrow's problem. Today belonged to the house on the quiet street where a family restarted. They sat at the kitchen table with its shallow gouge and its heat gloss. Michael brewed coffee, hands awkward from using a filter Emily usually folded. James tested the porch camera and set the camcorder down, its red light finally dark. Emily opened a window. The room breathed salt and something sweet from the neighbor's yard. Laura laid the blue dress across the table. The spare from 314 stayed in an evidence locker. This one, frayed hem, safety pin bright above the ribs, ridge along the left seam where a note had slept, belonged here for a minute longer. She ran her palm down the satin the way you smooth a child's hair before school. "I can store it," Emily said carefully. "Properly. Acid-free box, no light." Then after a beat, "If you want it near." Laura's mouth trembled around gratitude. "Near," she said, "but not as an altar, as a reminder." "Of what?" James asked, not unkindly, just tired and interested in precise nouns. "That we are not furniture," Laura said, "not signatures someone can move. That when a seam holds a secret, you can unpick it and live." Silence sat with them like a fifth chair, but it no longer crowded. Michael reached into a drawer and set a small folded paper on the table. Edges softened. Ink bled slightly by time. "I found this in a cookbook years ago," he said, voice low. "Your handwriting. I couldn't read the last line then." He slid it to Laura. It was the kitchen note she had written on the wedding morning, the twin of the strip she'd sewn into the dress. The same lines about the unit, the same last sentence, a wild scribble as thunder dragged over the roof. "If I disappear, don't wait in silence. Make noise." Michael's eyes met hers. "I should have made more," he said. "You kept us fed," Laura replied. "You kept their laughter. That's a kind of noise?" James cleared his throat. "So what do we do with all of it?" he asked. "The files? The tape? The boxes?" "We tell it true," Emily said simply. "No ghosts, no myths. A city and a family and a lock that looked like help." She smiled without softening. I have a story to pitch." Laura looked at her daughter, at the reporter posture she'd grown to carry pain and purpose at once. "Tell them we were ordinary," she said. "That ordinary kept us alive." They packed the dress, acid-free paper, careful hands, then slid the box onto a shelf where morning light could find the lid but not the cloth. Michael rehung his ring on its chain. James labeled a hard drive "Evidence," Bennett, and slid it beside the coffee. Carla's card sat by the phone. Coffee ringed now, already familiar. Later, they walked to the church they had all learned by sound. The brass trio rehearsed on the steps again, 3 bars at a time, until the trumpet found its note. People looked up as the 4 of them passed, then back down, the way a town does when it is choosing to let you be a person and not a headline. A child pointed at Laura's pendant. Laura bent, showed the tiny knot, and said, "It used to hold a secret. Now it holds a story." They stopped under the steeple. The square shimmered with heat and the ordinary noise of a city that had outlived more than one scandal. Laura took a breath and closed her eyes. Cicadas sawed in the live oaks. A screen door thudded. Somewhere a radio played a beach song that would be an oldie even in another decade. The sounds were the same. The meanings had changed. "First day," Emily said, half teasing, half reverent. "Not first," Laura answered, smiling, "but better." They turned toward home. On the bakery window, the missing poster still hung, edges curled, tape tired. The caption read, "Missing since August 14th. Emily stepped inside, spoke to the owner in a murmur, and returned with the frame. Together they carried it to the church steps and set it gently beside the brass cases. "Not missing," Emily said, pen poised. "Found." She wrote it in careful block letters, then added one more sentence beneath for anyone who needed it more than they knew. "If you disappear, don't wait in silence. Make noise." They walked on. The city was a hymn of small sounds. And when Laura stepped out of the shade, it was no longer like someone leaving a photograph. It was like a photograph finally stepping into the light with everyone in it.